It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right. Welcome, CoCo Cruisers. You are listening to episode 52 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. This, of course, is John Linville, and I'm here with most of my co-hosts. Let's see, we've got, of course, Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got Mike Rowan. Hello, Myro.
Hello.
And, of course, Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Hey, everybody.
All right. How is everyone doing?
Wonderful.
Good. Great.
Cool. Well, it's time ticking away. Well, by the time you hear this one, CoCo Fest will be about 7 months away. And again, by the time this one gets out, or give or take a day or two, Tandy Assembly will be like 12 months away because happens to coincide with the end of this month, which is our usual release window. So we might, who knows, we could get this one out while Tandy Assembly is happening, but it won't be in much before. What's everybody been up to? I know I was actually doing some traveling. I spent, well, not last week, but the week before, I spent in Lisbon, Portugal. It's a lovely city if you ever happen to find your way there. Was not any place I'd ever really thought about going, so it's had no great historical significance to me, although I'm sure for people who are historians, especially of the age of explorers and various Portuguese explorers, there's a lot of history there for that. But again, a beautiful, sunny city there on the Iberian Peninsula. A good time was had by all. I actually took my wife with me this time. It's officially a trip for a Linux conference. But she was able to take and do some touring, and she had a lot of fun. We didn't do any CoCo work over there in Lisbon. I wanted to find a retro shop or whatever, but I kind of failed at that too. But anyway, anyone else got any big projects going on, or getting ready for your Tandy Assembly displays and that sort of thing? Or?
I just got a project going on called Life.
Yeah.
I hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure Mike has been very busy with the Tandy Assembly preparation, especially with that last-minute shuffle. That must have been exciting.
Yeah. Not the kind of excitement you want in your life, but...
Neil, how about you? It's all on you, man. What have you been up to?
Oh, I've been retroing it up, that's for sure. Last weekend I was at VCF Midwest in Elmhurst, Illinois. That was fun. And I was prepping for Tandy Assembly, getting the shirts and hats ready. And also working on a small side project here, making a floppy disk version of Night Lore.
Oh.
That'll be ready for TA.
Oh,
that
cool.
should be fun.
Yeah.
Very good.
Cool. Yeah, I have, of course, my usual embarrassingly large number of eBay items, but nothing too exciting. I did... long ago in one of our previous episodes, I think I mentioned something about Input magazine, which was, I think it was published over in the UK. It is kind of like a typical 80s computer magazine in some ways, a lot of type-in stuff. But this one, it's like a series of like 52 magazines that is kind of a tutorial on general programming and game programming and stuff. The interesting part being that in each part they kind of break it down and kind of give you the specifics for different computers or whatever, and so like the Commodore 64, the ZX Spectrum, and they actually have a little chunk for they kind of put together the CoCo and the Dragon. Anyway, they published these, and then the publisher was Marshall Cavendish, and they actually, similar to, if you remember the Rainbow binders, the red binders you could get for Rainbow magazine. They published binders for this Input magazine, And you can get them. In fact, I was able to get a full set already bound or whatever. And so they arrived, not too pricey, and a pretty cool little magazine. So someday when I retire and have nothing better to do, I'm going to sit and read some of them.
Yeah, good score.
I did pick up an original Spectral Associates game, Ghost Gobbler. I picked that up off of eBay.
Cool.
Yeah, neat.
So hadn't had a chance to load that one up yet, but expecting it. The packaging and stuff looks awesome, of course.
Yep.
Pretty exciting stuff there. Sounds like that probably covers our activities for the month. That's a good introduction. Should get us started. So now that we're warmed up, why don't we take a little break, and then we'll be back with some announcements.
Hi, Sullivan Antonio here with a great product that'll change your life. No more dull mid-April weekends filled with boring conversation. No more wondering what to do with your CoCo. All this from one amazing product, CoCo Fest. With this incredible product, you get full access to technical presentations, hardware vendors, software vendors, demonstrations, podcasters and videocasters, a host of new friends, a sense of accomplishment, not to mention delicious barbecue and the no minimum bid auction. But wait, there's more. Similar products cost thousands more and promote poor posture and tooth decay. We've got CoCo 1s, CoCo 2s, CoCo 3s, CoCo FPGAs, Dragons, MC10s, and more. I've tried it, and CoCo Fest can really change your life. It'll put a spring in your step and reinvigorate your mind. CoCo Fest in Lombard, Illinois.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. And now we have time for announcements. So we are the CoCo Crew Podcast, and we are available on Twitter. Our handle is at CoCo Crew Podcast. That's CoCoCrewPodcast. If you're prone to sending tweets, then feel free to tweet at us, and we may just tweet back to you. Also, we, of course, are available on Facebook, and we have a Facebook group that's called the CoCo Crew Podcast. That's 4 separate words in that case. Let's see, we are an audio podcast, and so we are, of course, available on iTunes, also available through Google Play. Of course, we're available for streaming through Stitcher and through TuneIn. We are available on Spotify. So for a while, we've been taking our audio podcasts and doing a little conversion on them to make them into video files that we would make available on YouTube. Not the best video in the world, just some still pictures mostly. But there's a handy feature that YouTube, if you turn on the subtitles, it will put up subtitles. So for those of you, especially those in our listening audience for whom English is not a first language, I've been told that it can be easier to follow the podcast using subtitles. So you may want to consider consuming the podcast through YouTube. The video podcasts are supposed to be being made available on the CoCo TV channel on Roku. This work sponsored by Roger Taylor. Haven't checked recently, but it's hopefully still up to date. If not, well, ping Roger. Or let me know. I'll ping Roger. Of course, we are a member of the Throwback Network. This is a collection of retro-themed podcasts. They're not all technology, but they do sort of center around the 80s and 80s culture. When you're done listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast, if you're looking for something else to listen to, then we recommend that you check out the Throwback Network. Also, we are listed on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. This is also a listing of retro-themed podcasts. In this case, all of the podcasts are themed around technology and gaming in particular, so old home computers and home video game consoles. So again, if you're looking for something else to occupy your podcast listening time, then do check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have a need to host audio on the internet, whether it be for your church or business or your club or perhaps your own podcast, then we do recommend that you check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. If you'd like to reach out and contact the host of the CoCo Crew Podcast, we have some email addresses available. The first 3 will reach all of the hosts. You can use any one that you like, whichever one you can remember. Those are, of course, show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org, Also podcast, PODCAST, and feedback, FEEDBACK, both of those at CoCoCrew.org. That's at CoCoCrew.org. Also, if you'd rather contact just one of our hosts, then we each have an individual email address. Of course, I'm available as John, John. Neil, of course, is Neil, Neil. Mike, Mike. Boise is Boisy. And, of course, Ron is RON, all of those at CoCoCrew.org. So that concludes our usual announcements. At this point, we'd also like to cover some of our upcoming events of interest that we believe are of interest to our listeners in real life. So the first one, of course, is coming up October 18th, 20th of 2019. This is the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. This is a big retro gaming event being held, of course, in Portland, Oregon, at the Oregon Convention Center. I've never actually been to one, but I've heard lots of good things. Like they're going to have total footage of 150,000 square feet. If you are interested in retro technology, retro gaming, that sort of thing, and you are anywhere near the Pacific Northwest part of the United States, then I would recommend that you find a way to get to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo coming up October 18th through the 20th of 2019. Coming up December 7th, 2019, we have World of Commodore 2019. This, of course, is a Commodore-themed event being held in the Toronto, Canada area. I don't see the exact name of the venue, but there's a link in the show notes. You can find out more information. It's World of Commodore 2019. I hear it's a great event. Neil, will you be going to this one?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of going to this one.
Yeah, I know you've gone in the past. You usually have good things to say.
Yeah, I usually, I haven't missed the last 4 years. I'm actually thinking of getting a table at this event. It'll be my first time getting a table, yeah.
Cool. Hopefully they don't eat you alive as a non-Commodore person.
Oh, yeah. Bring some tandies in there. Got to watch out.
Cool. Well, very exciting. Again, that's World of Commodore 2019, Toronto, Canada, December 7th, 2019. And, of course, last but not least, on our list, coming up April 18th and 19th of 2020, we'll have, of course, the 29th annual last Chicago CoCo Fest, which will be held in Elk Grove, the Holiday Inn in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. This is our big event. With Tandy Assembly now passed, it's our big event for the community. The event that started our podcast and brought us all together in the first place. If you're within, 6 hours of Chicago, then you have a moral imperative to make it down to CoCo Fest.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Even if you're 8 hours.
Even 8 hours, exactly. Well,
sure, why not?
It'd be a fun event. Lots of hangout time and get together, see the other CoCo people, see what projects people have been saving up for CoCo Fest, what new products they want to announce, all that sort of thing. Should be a good time. 29th annual last Chicago CoCo Fest coming up April 18th and 19th of 2020.
One more item, the Glenside Color Computer Club is having elections for officers that will run through October 10th. The Glenside Color Computer Club is, of course, the organization responsible for organizing CoCo Fest. You can vote online, but you must be a member of the Glenside Color Computer Club for your vote to count. Just point your browser to tandylist.com.
Okay, well, those are our announcements for this month. We're going to take another little break, and then we'll be back with some news.
Were your taxes a mess last year? Do you look at your bank balance and wonder where all the money went? Then you need CoCo Accountant 2. This home and small business accounting program is all you need to answer the 3 big questions about your money. Where did it come from? Where did it go? And what can I deduct from my taxes? Spend a few minutes with your canceled checks, credit cards, receipts, and payroll stubs. The 32K tape version stores 450 entries in a single file, 500 for disk. The 64K version stores 900 entries on tape or disk. Our happy customers say this is the most useful program they own, and you'll agree. Only $34.95, tape or disk. CoCo Accountant 2 from Federal Hill Software. Fine products for the Color Computer, Dragon, and MC10.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for some news.
The first news item is a video called Bomb Squad on YouTube by our good friend of the show, Mr. Jim Gary. It starts out with some text and has a maze component to it. It's like you walk through the maze and you are trying to disarm a bomb. Useful skill these days.
Very cool. Always good to start off the rotation with the Jim Gary game, right?
So I'm looking at this video, and I'm pretty impressed that Jim looks like he's building a 3D-ish maze that you walk through, kind of a la Dungeons of Daggorath. This has got to be running on MC10, of course, yeah. Good job, Jim.
Very cool.
All right, the next news item is this week we sold our 100th CoCo VGA kit by Brendan Donahue. So Brendan obviously is the creator of the CoCo VGA along with his friend Jeremy Spiller. Looks like they have sold, I think Ed Snyder's actually manufacturing them along with Brendan. They have sold 100 kits. That's awesome. I have one, so I know that one of those 100 are mine.
But, yeah, two.
That is a cool piece of hobby engineering that definitely has some interesting applications beyond just enabling a VGA display for CoCo 1 or 2. You can control the palette register on it, and so you can recolorize some old games that, admittedly the original color palette of the CoCo is a little harsh on the eyes sometimes. So the CoCo VGA has the beauty of being able to correct some of that. Very nice. Yep.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Brendan and crew.
Congratulations. Just to let you know, a little teaser, I'm going to be giving a game talk on a game written for the CoCo VGA this month at my Neil's Corner.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Neil, you're full of surprises. So the next news item is titled The Beauty of the COBOL Programming Language by Bob Resselman at DevOps.com. This is an article about the COBOL programming language, which probably is older than I am. But looks very nice. Looks like, I didn't realize this, there's maybe a modern IDE that you can write COBOL in. Goes through designing a simple COBOL program, gives you some ideas on how to structure it. It's kind of like a tutorial, an introduction. Pretty in-depth. Wow. I mean, it's something I need to check out. Pretty cool.
Yeah. It's hard to get more retro than COBOL. It kind of shoots past our normal window of retro interest. But there is, as I understand it, somewhere out there in the wild, there is a version of the COBOL programming language that will target OS 9 on the 6809. I don't believe Tandy ever sold it, and I've never seen it, but I have heard it exists. So if you have a line on how to get that, we would love to see that show up in the archives. In any case, might be a cool thing of interest to the kind of people who might listen to a show like this.
No doubt, no doubt. The next news item is titled, Here's a Happy Accident I Discovered While Probing Around Yesterday by Andy's Arcade on Facebook. Now, John, I looked at this. I'm not quite sure at first glance what this is. Can you explain?
Oh, yeah. So I thought this was kind of cool. Pretty sure this is, given the title, I'm pretty sure it's inside of an arcade game. I'm not sure which one. Does it say? Yeah, Sprint 4. If you've ever had, arcade cabinets and poked around on the inside, or you may have just, if you ever hung around the arcade, you may know that sometimes there's switches and things on the inside that can activate test modes and operator modes and that sort of thing. And it sounds like, I have no idea who Andy's Arcade is, but it sounds like whoever that was doing something like that and brought up this mode that you can see the screen. And I'm given the title of Sprint 4. I think it's some sort of racing game. And if you look at the screen shown, you can make out the outline of a racetrack of some sort, but if you look a little closer where it should be kind of the open area you would drive in, it's kind of tiled with little arrows. And so the notion is that kind of a peek behind the curtain that whereas you might have thought that whoever wrote this game somehow made the cars able to figure out that they were in a curve and needed to keep turning and whatever as they raced around the track. But instead, it turns out that they've essentially created little maps so that depending on where a car ends up, it tells it what direction it needs to turn next. So it's almost like you see the old dance instructor things where people would put little footprints down on the floor, and you'd step 1, 2, 3, 4, to the different footprints. It's almost like the video game version of that, so that when your car goes around the track, these are not your cars, but the computer-controlled cars. As they move over one of these arrow-shaped footprints, it tells the car which direction to go next. So it's sort of an implementation of what we would call game AI, except that there's even less intelligence than what you might would think. It's literally just a game following a map. But I thought it was a cool idea, and I thought it could be helpful for somebody who's trying to figure out how to do AI for a relatively simple game, which in this case is a racing game, but it might be a way to do something for monsters in a maze or whatever. And now, obviously this is a little weird that they've actually mapped it out. They actually display arrows or whatever. In reality, if you're writing the game, you wouldn't necessarily put in data that shows arrows on the screen in any case, but you do a map or a table of some sort that would correlate your position on the screen with a direction or whatever. Don't take the screens too literally, but it seems like a pretty neat idea that could be helpful for some people wanting to write games with a limited version of AI.
Vectrix Asteroid Controller. So, John, this reminded me of you. This is looks like someone made a homebrew controller for the Vectrix that lets you play asteroids. It looks like it has 5 buttons. Kind of reminds me of how the Asteroid arcade game was.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, they're custom controllers. Obviously, they're targeting the Vectrix, so not exactly what we would do. Although the Vectrix is fairly similar, and electrically speaking, as to how you would interface for the CoCo, other than the fact they have 4 buttons. Just sort of demoing that sometimes custom controllers are kind of nice depending on the game. They don't have to be super complicated. In this case, it's just buttons. But they've done a good job. They've done good workmanship on drilling the holes, and even gone so far as to get the overlay graphics or whatever. So it's nice that they've done this job. And like I said, it's for a Vectrix. It doesn't directly help you for the CoCo, but maybe it could be inspirational for someone.
Cool. All right, the next news item is kind of a sad note. Sunsetting Mercurial support in Bitbucket by Dennis Chan at Bitbucket. Man, I haven't used Mercurial in so long, but Bitbucket is one of the online source code repository services similar to GitHub, except I think Bitbucket was using Mercurial at first, and I know they're using Git now, but they are definitely removing removing Mercurial from Bitbucket. It looks like around June 1 of next year.
That's right. Yeah, it's just time marches on to some degree, and sometimes new technologies appear on the scene, and they're similar, and maybe at first it's not clear which one's going to win out, and then eventually one of them does win out. And that's kind of the case here, where at some level, Mercurial and Git, some other options are, they're different from some preceding configuration management systems like CVS or RCS, but they're fairly similar to each other in a lot of ways. And so at one time, it wasn't clear if Mercurial, now for those that aren't totally familiar, if you've ever used a command HG to manage source code, that's Mercurial. So, HG, of course, is a chemical symbol for mercury. Anyway, at some point, things straighten out, and I guess at this point, you like you're saying, you hadn't used Mercurial for anything in a while. I think pretty much nobody else has either. And so there's just no demand for Mercurial at this point, and Git provides, essentially an overlay or a superset of the functionality, and seems to be what people are using these days across the industry. There it is. If you do have an old project on Bitbucket that's stored in Mercurial, you probably want to look at, there are automated tools that will help you migrate to Git, but you probably want to look at doing that.
All right, this is a fun one to start off my news section. It's another game, or I should say simulator, from Jim Gary. Advanced Lawnmower Simulator. Not just a lawnmower simulator, but it is advanced. So if you want,
Yeah,
Cool game.
it looks really cool.
it's funny, and it's one of those. Who would ever think to write a game simulating a lawnmower?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably more fun than I would have given it credit for at the onset. But,
Yeah, it's cool.
so
And
pretty neat. And,
The names are hilarious too.
so, yeah.
Grassmaster 3000.
Cool.
That's neat. All right, next news article is from Brett Gordon. Fuzzix turns 0.3 today. So Alan Cox had made the announcement, it looks like here. And I had no idea it was on that many platforms.
Yeah, it definitely targets a lot of platforms. You know, the key to any OS kernel, of course, is supporting a CPU, and then supporting the platforms that use that CPU is usually just a matter of writing drivers and that sort of thing. If you remember all the articles in the Rainbow and whatever back in the day about why OS 9 was a cool thing, a lot of them transfer over to something like Fuzzix or whatever. It's cool to see that project is continuing to progress, and I'm not sure if mature is the right word or not, but it's making some progress and getting a little older. And of course, it's kind of funny how he phrased it, turn 0.3. That's the version number, not an age, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, that is. All right, our next news article is from Carlos Camacho. This post is about a coding challenge for the 6502.
Yeah, so that's the one where they've got the X mark on the screen, right?
Yeah, I saw he posted that.
Somebody came up with that as a task or whatever. It's kind of a challenge to see how well you can do it, that sort of thing.
There's a famous man from North Carolina thinking, well, probably not you because you're not in a 6502.
Yeah, well, I think he's sort of semi-quoting me there, but I wasn't inspired by the 6502 part, but that's okay if you are. Anyway, I think this kind of slides into the next one, too.
Yeah, the next news article is from Geronomius?
Geronomius? Yeah, I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Geronomius?
But,
given that the VZ has the same 6847, anyone feel they can do better than 27 bytes on the Z80?
Yeah, so basically Simon produced something for Carlos's challenge there, and then this Geronomius, I've seen his name quite a bit associated with the VC200 and such. Basically extending it out, saying, well, we've got the same graphics hardware. That part should be the similar. What can you do? But they have the Z80 processor. So it's basically just extending the challenge out to another system. But I thought it was, since it was sort of the same thing, I thought it was cool to include it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next news article is posting on video on YouTube from Electron Noobs. Kind of a cool name. It's a keyboard, PCB, serial output, alphabet, numbers, signs. It looks like someone has made a little keyboard keypad here.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a neat project. We hear so much about keyboards for the CoCo, you'd think that finding a CoCo with a working keyboard was some sort of a rare exception or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't find that to be true, but I'm sure I have occasionally found ones with bad keyboards, or at least keyboards that were imperfect. There are solutions brewing out there, some better than others, some more expensive than others, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's even a new one coming out from Boys in Tech. Something like this could also be an option if you're so inclined, and if you're not particularly concerned about the cosmetics, more about the functionality and or the price, you might consider a project more like that.
Yeah, it's nice to have options, different price brackets too.
Sure.
All right, next news article is from Nick Marentes, and he's got an update on his Gunstar video game he's working on for the CoCo 3. It's a Chapter 20, The Weaponizer. So he has added in advanced weapons. So when you start out in the game, you just have a regular, fire weapon, and then you can actually upgrade it as the game progresses. by collecting what he calls the weaponizer. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's good to see continued progress.
All right, our next one is from our good friend Jim Gary. It's Usborne's Haunted House Text Adventure. This is a type-in, it looks like, from a magazine for the Haunted House Text Adventure for the MC-10. This link covers, it looks like it's got more information, not only about the game, but about some of the programming. So,
more good work from Jim Gary. I guess this is his blog this time. He said it's good to see people sharing some of their thought process when they do work. And
yeah, and some good links, plus a link to a walkthrough, too, if you want to see that.
Very cool.
So you just purchased a TRS-80 Model 1 on the internet?
Yeah, it's going to be great. It was my very first computer.
So did you get a tape player and cassette cable?
No.
How about an expansion interface so you can have more RAM and disk drives?
No.
How about actual 5¼ inch floppy drives?
No.
You're not going to be able to do much with your TRS-80 Model 1.
No, I guess I have a lot more purchases to make on the internet.
It's probably going to take a lot more time and money to gather all of those other components, especially when you can't be sure they'll even work until you receive them.
Yeah.
Don't worry. For about the same price as all of those items, you can purchase the Model 1 system expander from Bartlett Labs.
Yeah?
The M1 SE allows you to boot directly in LDOS and access hard drive images stored on compact flash.
Wow!
It also adds extras like an SVGA port, Ethernet, real-time clock, and joystick port. You can even move software directly from your PC to your TRS-80. You'll be enjoying the entire catalog of TRS-80 software in a flash.
Where can I get one?
Just go to bartlettlabs.com for details and pricing.
Thanks.
Bartlett Labs, making your TRS-80 what it was meant to be.
Do you want to fully utilize the power of the 6809 and the Radio Shack TRS-80 color computer? Then subscribe today to 68 Microjournal. 68 Microjournal was established with one objective in mind: to provide a magazine for 68XX users by 68XX users. 68 Microjournal has a strong worldwide following and has been covering the TRS-80 color computer longer than any magazine. Read product reviews, technical discussions, and get helpful hints about expanding memory, power supply cooling, repairing sticky keyboards, and connecting printers, to name just a few. A one-year subscription to 68 Microjournal is only $24.50. 68 Microjournal, dedicated to 68XX users worldwide.
All right, our next one is from Peter Bright at Ars Technica. The PC BIOS will be killed off by 2020 as Intel plans to move to pure UEFI.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of people sad about that.
Yeah.
Well, there's probably some consternation. A lot of people may not even totally be aware of it, especially if you haven't bought a new PC in a while. There for a while, I think a lot of them were kind of offering this just to boot in BIOS mode versus UEFI mode. If you buy a brand new one, I'm not sure they even offer BIOS mode anymore, but I could be wrong. The point being is, the PC BIOS is going away within 2020. Maybe slightly optimistic, but at least you won't be buying new ones much after that with BIOS, if at all. And so the takeaway for me is that effectively means that the venerable PC, at least if it has a BIOS, will effectively become a retro computer at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's one way to look at it.
Pretty cool.
What's going on here? Last month we announced the floppy support in Linux is gone, and now the BIOS is going. I mean, this is pretty sad here.
Yeah, we're officially old.
Changes are coming.
Yeah. I was in a room with Linus, and I failed to mention the floppy thing to him. So need to get on the ball. Oh well.
Yeah. All right, our next one looks like it's from Rick Adams, but it's about Chet Simpson recently provided version 4 of his database of messages dumped from the Delphi CoCo Special Interest Group to the Color Computer Archive. This one's kind of fun and cool because you go to this link, you'll get a little pop-up window that looks like Delphi, and you can type in commands to jump to certain messages and look around the database. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's slow, like you were on a 2400 baud modem.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, Rick's been making a project of that, being able to access so Chet collected the messages or whatever, made them available, and Rick's been doing this in viewer tool or whatever you want to call it. And as part of that, he's kind of recreating the the 300 baud experience or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
that's well
cool.
done. It's a fun way to look at the database. Check that out. All right, our next one is from Pete Collins. Inferno, the Dragon 32 cassette, 50 game 33.
I guess these cassettes, these numbered cassettes in the Dragon world, I'm not sure who made them or why they're numbered that way or whatever, but I think it's a bit like the Rainbow on Tape or something like that. If you're a Dragon user, feel free to call in and correct me on that one. But, so someone playing the game or whatever and demonstrating it, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that links a link to a YouTube video, so check it out. All right, our next one is an interesting one. It's from Umbrella Terms at YouTube. It's called School Maze, Educational Games, Ideology, and Neoliberalism. It's about 10 minutes, this video. You'll have to check it out for yourself.
Yeah.
I think it's reaching a little bit. It's following software on the Dragon, and I don't think this person is from the UK, but they were covering it. It's very much from the perspective of the UK government and their effort to push educational software into schools. And the Dragon was among those that were purchased, and this particular game they follow is for the Dragon. But yeah, it's an interesting video and an interesting political theory surrounding that. Whether you agree with it or not, it's an interesting watch. So
sure, exactly.
unusual that the Dragon would be part of the subject of that. So check that out.
But yeah, this is the CoCo Crew where we like to give you food for thought and let you decide for yourself.
Yeah.
And this is definitely one of those cases.
Yeah, that was a cool find. Interesting video. Our next one is from Emerson Costa, Experimenting Image Conversion Techniques via GIMP. And if you don't know it, GIMP is it's the graphic image manipulation program. It's an open source graphics tool that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's kind of the free version of Photoshop. You can think of it that way.
Right.
And it is a bitmap graphics tool, but it can be used to convert all kinds of graphics. And I'm sure many people have used it with the color computer to convert images to a format that's digestible by the color computer. And that's what's been done here, showing the original game that the graphics were taken from and the conversion to the color computer. Of course, the color computer's color set. It's interesting. What do you think, John?
Well, it's always cool to see examples of people doing that, and it's useful to be able to convert graphics from a modern source through those kind of tools and scale them down and apply various effects or whatever, and stuff like that is easiest done with a tool and not sitting in front of a drawing program. So
yeah.
So it's good to be able to see that. The results he's getting, that shows in the picture there, I think are pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's a nice tool to have in your pocket.
Definitely. Runs on Linux, Mac, and Windows. So.
All right. Well, moving on. Start off with another Jim Gary work. I think it's called Rocket One, and then in quotes he's got Lunar Lander. So essentially he's got a program that he's ported over that's essentially a version of Lunar Lander, which was kind of a popular thing back in the day. Have the game where you pretend you're in the Lunar Lander and you have to manage fuel and thrust and that sort of stuff and try to hit the ground. Not too hard, but don't run out of fuel, burning your fuel as you're descending. It's the kind of game only geeks can love in some ways. But this is kind of a spin on it with a little bit of graphics thrown in. Again, it's a Jim Gary game. It's a great way to make better use of your MC10. We like the MC10 at this place. We don't use it to hold up on doors. We don't think it's particularly good at that anyway. So if you've got an MC10, this is a good way to make some use of it. So give it a try. All right, so moving on. We've got a link from Mike Rojas. I assume that's close enough to a pronunciation. It says, I wasn't too hot on drilling my case to mount the CoCo VGA button board, so here's what I did. We mentioned the CoCo VGA earlier. One of its features is it's got like a little daughter board that has some switches that you can use for settings. Won't go into a lot of detail there, but basically you need some way to make them accessible. I think the typical or the recommended use is to mount in the case and drill some holes for access to the buttons. But Mike didn't want to do that. Clearly he's a 3D printer aficionado of some sort. And so he's designed, it's basically a box, but it's a box that mates up to the back of the CoCo, going in through one of the ports. Allows you to mount your button board outside the CoCo's main case, but still in a nice kind of controlled way. I was thinking Brendan had something similar to this that he was making available at CoCo Fest.
He does. Yeah, I've got one of those. It holds in the control board so that if you don't want to modify your color computer, you can just run the little ribbon cable, without cutting it or anything, and then it plugs in to this little 3D printed box that contains the connection board, the control board. So yeah, this is very similar. What he's done, I kind of liked what he did with the jumper for the channel selector. Yeah.
So cool. It's another option, and it looks good. Let many flowers bloom. So it's good to see a few other options, see some people expand their hobby and, take a different tack. So,
yeah, nice.
Very cool. And the next one is a YouTube video, music albums on game cartridges. So I think I've mentioned this concept a few other times. But basically, some of the other retro systems have people that are actually making, essentially chiptune music albums available in cartridge form. And so when you want to play chiptunes, at the very least, you need data to drive the music. Quite often that is going to mean data to feed to an actual sound chip of some sort. Also, many times it'll be actual code that, does special effects or whatever, feeds them the data to the chips in a different kind of way, which may not be as straightforward as one might imagine, whatever. So it's a combination of code and data to drive these chiptune sounds. These are for the Commodore 64 and the Sega Mega Drive, which of course is the same as the Sega Genesis. It's just a concept, just illustrating that some people are doing this. If you happen to be a chiptune person and you happen to have, a Game Master cartridge, this might be a really cool way to publish a musical album because, the Game Master cartridge would, of course, accommodate your sound data and whatever code that goes with it, which may include graphical displays or whatever. And, of course, the Game Master cartridge game hardware or the sound hardware adds minimal cost to the cartridge, and so it's actually a cost-effective way to distribute games with music. Your users don't have to go off and spend $150 on a Mega Mini MPI or whatever other hardware might be necessary to play music. You can just give them a cartridge that does cost something, but not that much. So that's me endorsing the idea. Hope you will at least take a look and see what you think. Give us some feedback if you think I'm off my rocker. Moving on. So another YouTube video. This one, Vsauce 2, whoever exactly that might be. But this is a pretty neat idea or a neat concept of talking about the game of Battleship. And so we all remember the commercials from the back in the day, B4. Oh, you sang my Battleship. Little Milton Bradley game, if I'm not mistaken. At first glance, it seems like Battleship is pretty much just random guessing, but you can apply some strategy to it, and so this video is a discussion of it. If, like me, you've considered writing a Battleship-style game for the CoCo or anything else, maybe it's worthwhile to at least evaluate what sort of strategies might be applied to your game. Maybe discussed this concept before as well. The idea of using an oscilloscope display, driving an oscilloscope as a display from the computer, And then in this case, actually combining that with actually using sound data to drive the oscilloscope display. And it is actually possible. So when you drive an oscilloscope as a display, built into that, because what you draw kind of disappears automatically, you kind of have to keep drawing it, which means there's a certain amount of cyclical drawing to the display. Cycles, what else has cycles to it? Well, sound, right? So if you send the right data to your oscilloscope display, you can have sound that you can see, and sometimes it's not just waveforms. You can actually make actual drawings with it, which has interesting effects on the sound. Anyway, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out the video. The link is in the show notes. But you can do some pretty neat stuff with it. This is actually, I know Steve Noskowitz, I think he actually even pointed this one out to me, this video as well. But that's one of the things that he did with his laser hardware. He actually was able to output that to sound as well. And so he could do something similar, or at least theoretically. I'm not sure if he actually experimented with the drawing with sound per se, but his hardware at least could drive audio output. So he must have been on that path a little bit. This is kind of mind-blowing the first time I saw stuff like this, that you can actually make meaningful shapes that have sound that's not just scratchy noise. So, does that surprise any of you guys?
Yeah, I was surprised by the sound.
Yeah. So, I would think, well, sure, you can draw and you can be sound at the same time, but you're not going to get any kind of meaningful sound or whatever, but you can to some degree. And I'm sure there is some artifacts of the drawing that you'll hear as scratchiness in the sound, but it doesn't have to overwhelm it. Anyway, looking forward to everyone's projects. Have them ready by CoCo Fest. It'll be great.
I'll just bring a Vectrex.
Exactly. Very good.
Canadian color for the TRS-80 color computer. If you own a color computer, Dragon 32 or TGP System 100, don't miss out. Canada's first color computer magazine is now available on tape. It's published monthly and loaded with programs, reviews, tips, editorials, and more. Order your subscription today and save $12 off the newsstand price. Canadian color, now on tape.
Come to the Radio Shack hideout. I'm Mr. Small, and I'm tired of big computers. Give me something that's really, really small.
MC10 is small. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not big. No, no, no. MC10's got just 4 gigabytes. Tiny metal keys in a case that's white.
Radio Shack's MC10 combined with any color television gives you a big system in a tiny package.
4 gigabytes, they feel right. Tiny metal keys in a case that's white.
Mr. Turtle, how many megabytes does it take to get a good deal on a CoCo hard drive?
I have no idea. Ask Mr. Owl.
Mr. Owl, how many megabytes does it take to get a good deal on a CoCo hard drive?
Oh, let's find out. 10, 15, 20. Oh, it's 20.
Looking for a hard drive for your color computer? Ask the Owl. Owlware is the leading provider of hard drive systems for color computers, offering 20, 40, and 80 megabyte hard drive systems. Our complete hard drive packages include the hard drive, case with fan, SCSI controller, LR Owl interface, and software, fully assembled and tested. 20 megabytes, just $495. 40 megabytes, just $609. And an amazing 80 megabytes for just $875. All our drives come with a 1-year limited warranty, and parts and labor are covered for 90 days. We've earned our place in the market by providing products you can be proud of. Customer service, quality products, and sound design. For all of your hard and floppy drive needs, remember to ask the Owl. Owlware, located in Mertztown, Pennsylvania.
All right, well, our final item, or my final item in this section at least, is one from Paris Surratt, who just can't be stopped. Once again, he keeps saying it's the last one. We'll see. But he's got one last pack of AGD, that's Arcade Game Designer, converted games. So these are the games written essentially for the Spectrum using an Arcade Game Designer tool that he's been able to convert over to run on the CoCo and Dragon. And as he says, it's the last pack, it's number 37. So if you've been following this at all, you know what they are. If not, well, if you're looking for extra games to play on the CoCo, well, you're in luck.
This is starting to sound like CoCo Fest, the last.
Yeah. So maybe he'll dig up some more. It'll be fun. Hopefully there'll be more, but for now, that's it.
The next news item is Alpha Force by Jim Gary. This is a game, I'm not exactly sure if it's based on something existing, but it seems to be some type of not a maze game, but it's hard to explain, I guess, John. It's like across a bunch of squares, a grid game, what I wanted to say. And I'm not exactly sure how it's played, but watching the video, by the way, I have to say, Jim, I love the way when you start the video, you always show the very last bit of source code for the game before you click or type run. Pretty cool.
Yep. Again, it's always good to see more output from Jim. And what else can you say? I haven't really, like you say, I haven't played this game. Not immediately apparent from looking at it exactly what the objective is, but I'm sure it'd be worth figuring out.
The next news item is titled, "We played modern games on a CRT monitor, and the results are phenomenal," by Richard Ledbetter and the Eurogamer. I saw this article earlier in the week and kind of glanced through it. There's even an accompanying video. Apparently, and much to my surprise, I guess, this guy was really taken aback by how well some modern games looked on a plain old CRT monitor, not the old LCD or the new LCD that we're all using now. So he wrote a really good article on that. Very interesting.
Confirming what we all know.
I definitely had Mike and Neil in mind with this one, but I think a lot of us old school people will occasionally sing the praises of CRT monitors. I was a little surprised to hear that new stuff that was presumably designed with plasmas and LCDs and whatever else in mind would also look better. It is sort of a reminder. Sometimes the advances in technology aren't better in every way. And, the modern flat panel displays all seem to rely heavily on processing and, whatever else that kind of takes something away. Sometimes the old analog techniques, the old analog technologies just kind of did it better by, and sure, things blurred together a little bit, but sometimes that was actually a better effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, nothing like a beam scanning across your monitor at 60 hertz,
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, the next article is titled, "I've just released firmware version 1.20 for the Dragon MMC," by Phil, L, Harvey Smith.
It says it updates his AVR and 6809 firmware, as initial support for booting Flex and Nitrous 9. Now an mdisc command that is used to create a new disk image. Yeah, the Dragon MMC, for those not familiar, is kind of sort of like a Dragon version of the CoCo STC. And I hear you saying, well, CoCo STC works on a Dragon. Well, it does, but another implementation is sort of the same idea, and that's giving SD card access to in the Dragon. I think this one will actually work with the CoCo as well, but maybe not the CoCo 3. But anyway, it's a similar idea. It's it's uses a new type of media, and I think the Dragon MMC has better support for loading cassette files, for what it's worth. Perhaps that's not surprising, since the Dragon had a lot more releases on cassette, even in through its lifetime. Nothing against the SDC, just it's not the only game in town.
The next news item is titled, "My Homegrown Wire-Wrapped 64 kilobyte 6809 SAM VDG" by Henry Strickland. So I looked at this. This is a Facebook post. Henry says that he pulled out an old 6809 board from back in the day that he had down in his basement, that he had even ported Microware's OS 9 operating system to. Looks like it had 8 4164 RAM chips, and he also had a 68,000 board that was a slave board to the 6809. Very cool. Looks like it's an older project. I see some dust on the board, but apparently Henry got it to run again, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Yep, definitely. It's cool. We'd love to see the old projects, especially when you reinvigorate them. New projects are cool too. But we'll take what we can get.
Good stuff. The next news item is titled CoCo 3 OS 9 Level 2 Multi-User and Security Overview by TJB Chris at YouTube. This is a YouTube video that he is filming running there's a CoCo 3 running OS 9, presumably not Nitrous 9, but OS 9. And he's connecting a Apple IIe as a terminal to the CoCo 3 to demonstrate the time sharing and multi-user facilities of the operating system. It's a 15-minute video, and just going through it, scrubbing through it, it seems like it's pretty thorough.
Yeah, great video. I love seeing the, he's covering the security stuff and, multi-users, and just fun to watch if you're, it just reiterates the fact that OS 9 is a real operating system.
Yeah, definitely. I like that he did it with OS 9, real OS 9, shall we say.
Yeah.
Nitrous 9, it's a great project and nothing wrong with it, but so much of the emphasis nowadays is on the ease of use project or whatever, and what new game have we added, or what new function call or whatever. It's more of a back to basics thing of what really existed back in the day, which I think is cool.
Yeah, this really focuses on the heritage of OS 9, which made it really, really unique in the 8-bit world, especially on the home computers like the color computer, was the fact that you could connect a terminal to it and have other people using your CoCo at the same time. Really cool stuff. Good job. The final news item is titled, One Thing I Really Wanted to See Was What the Gimme X Extended Video Modes Can Do by Ed Snyder. So this is a Facebook post that Ed put up on the CoCo group on Facebook, and some very compelling and nice images. Looks like some fantasy images that he had placed in, it looks like 16 color mode, 640 by 225, which is a new video mode for the Gimme X.
Yep, just sort of a demo, look at what we can do, that sort of thing. It's the people that are excited about Gimme X are going to be excited about this. I'm sure I'm not covering up very well. Maybe I'm not as excited as some people. As far as I know, all my CoCo 3s have working gimmies. I even have one or two extra gimmies just in case. Maybe I'm cursing myself, but as long as I have my original gimmies, I'm not I'm not overly I'm not waiting for Gimme X to arrive, shall we say. I'm content with using my original hardware. But if you are somebody who's not content with your original hardware, who wants an extended version, and some people are starting to call this a CoCo 3 with a Gimme X. They're calling it a CoCo 3 Plus or some whatever. If you're a CoCo 3 Plus head, then this is exciting stuff for you. And so there you've got something to look forward to.
Yeah, and it always comes down to software. So if you're one of those people, write some cool code for it and bring it to CoCo Fest. We'd like to see it.
That's right.
Well, there you go. That's always the point. We need software to make these things work. So if you're going to write the software, then there you go. There's your marker. Get ready. All right. Well, I think that concludes our news segment. So why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with our user feedback.
Have you heard of the Fred hard drive emulator for the TRS-80?
Yeah, spelled kind of funny, ain't it?
With the Fred, you can store your entire library of TRS-80 software on a single SD card.
No way. I just finished sorting all of these floppy disks. It's beautiful.
Programs that run slowly from floppy disk run lightning fast with the Fred.
Listen, pal, I have lots of free time, and keeping my floppy disks organized is kind of my hobby.
The Fred also includes a battery-backed real-time clock.
If you can't affix gum labels to it, I ain't interested.
For information and pricing, contact Ian Maverick via email, ianm@trs-80.com.
Hey, do you know where I can find some more of those big plastic disk storage cases?
This month in CoCo History. Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we reach back 33 years to the September 1986 issue of the Rainbow magazine,
which heralded the availability of the then-new Color Computer 3. The amazing cover artwork by Fred Crawford shows a CM8 literally blasting through the yearbook-themed cover page, with the CoCo 3 diminutively appearing in the distant dark background. As with each September issue, this one covered educational topics, but the CoCo 3 was certainly noteworthy enough to make a splash in the ensuing pages. Lonnie Falk's monthly column in this issue told his first-hand story of the CoCo 3's announcement just months earlier on July 30th of that year. Falk himself was present that day for the computer's unveiling at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. Jim Reed gave the CoCo 3 some attention on page 16 in his Building September's Rainbow column. Pages 18 through 24 featured more articles on the machine as well, including one by famous game programmer Greg Zumwalt. Another CoCo game programmer, Steve Bjork, wrote on both the new machine and the potential of OS 9 Level 2 on pages 27 and 28. Another article, along with photos from the CoCo 3 announcement in New York, were featured on pages 29 through 31. The images showed luminaries such as Tandy's CEO John Roach, CoCo buyer Barry Thompson, product manager Mark Siegel, marketing executive Mark Yamagata, and even Microsoft's Bill Gates. I was just 15 years old when this issue hit newsstands and mailboxes across the country. I also remember the Radio Shack catalog, which came out around the same time, showing the new Color Computer 3 and CM8 monitor, along with a slate of games and programs for the system. For me, as I'm sure for many of you listening, this was a moment that stands out in memory for its excitement and anticipation. A special machine for a special time.
And that's this month in CoCo history.
Dude, you have to see this.
What is it?
It's the Proto-EEPROM CC from Prototech. I can program 2716, 2732, and 2732A EEPROMs.
So my EEPROM burner can do that.
This one has 4K of RAM so you can create and debug your RAM image before you burn your ROM.
Wow.
It's fully powered by the color computer, no wall warts or cords to get tangled. It just plugs into your cartridge slot.
Nice.
You can program the RAM or ROM directly from BASIC or assembly language.
Where can I get one?
It's just $149.95 from Prototech.
That's a bargain.
The Proto-EEPROM CC from Prototech, Boulder, Colorado.
You know, you and me, we've been together for a long time. And when you're working so hard, things can get a little hot. And you've got to find a way to cool it down. Cool down your color computer with the CoCo Cooler from REM Industries. It brings down the operating temperature to ambient, regardless of accessory load. Reduces temperature of the entire computer, not just the SAM chip. Easy 1-minute installation, and it's just $39.95. And now offering the CoCo Cooler 2. It's the same price and the same fit for the Color Computer 2. Don't let your color computer get too hot. Cool it down with the CoCo Cooler.
For fastest service, send money order or certified check. Add $2 shipping for continental U.S. Add $4 shipping for Alaska, Hawaii, Canada, and APOs. Add $15 shipping for overseas. Add $3 for 220 to 250 volt model. California residents add 6.5% sales tax. Will ship COD on USA shipments only. All merchandise shipped from stock. CoCo Cooler is a product of REM Industries Incorporated, Chatsworth, California.
All right. Welcome back to Feedback. Our first item of feedback today comes from Jason Moore. Jason says, I just started listening to the podcast and I made it through the first 7 episodes. I never owned a CoCo back in the day, in parentheses, Atari guy. Says, but now own a CoCo 1 and 2. I hope to try them out someday. I'm really enjoying the podcast and look forward to the next 50 or so episodes. Thanks. Well, Jason, you're welcome. I'm glad to have you aboard. Hope you enjoy the shows. I hope you enjoy your CoCos, and maybe someday you'll pick up a CoCo 3 as well. Either way, maybe a Dragon 2. That's not so bad either. Either way, I hope you're having a good time and enjoying yourself, and maybe you're writing a little code or doing some fun stuff. All right. Thank you, Jason. So moving on, we've got one from Vincent Tran. Vincent's a bit of a joker. He says, great episode. Now that we know Brett spends 99% of his time outside and only codes when he's snowed in, I hope he gets a huge snowstorm this winter without losing power. Smiley face. So yeah, definitely. Of course, Vince is referring to our last month's interview with Brett Gordon. Brett does a lot of cool projects, but yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a surprise that he spends all his time outside. Didn't strike me as a lumberjack, but hey, well, who knows, right? Yeah, that's cool. And like I said, whatever it takes to get Brett doing some cool stuff, then we support the snowstorm. All right, well, that's our feedback for this month. So we're going to take another little break. And I think we're going to be back with a host discussion.
Users in this world appear to switch windows by pressing clear. I wish to watch a bouncing sphere. The cry goes up both far and near. CoCo 3, CoCo 3, CoCo 3, CoCo 3. Backup lightning roar of floppy, switching disks to make a copy. CoCo 3, CoCo 3, CoCo 3.
You're listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast, a delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring Tandy Color Computer.
Okay, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for us to have a little host discussion where talk something over, toss around our opinions. Hopefully don't make anyone angry in the process. Sometimes that works better than others. Anyway, so the host discussion for this month, throwing out the question, is having any working CoCo, whatever you've got, is that good enough? Or do they all need to be what I would call Trailer Queen or a Resto Mod? Those are terms from the kind of car collecting world. Kind of a shame Ron's not here.
Yeah, you
anyway,
want that.
So Trailer Queen is the car that you basically only take to car shows. Basically, the only time the engine makes the wheels turn is when you're driving it onto the trailer and driving it back off of the trailer. So perfect. Do not touch the car. You might leave a fingerprint on the paint, that sort of thing. So I'm sure you get the picture there. So imagine a pristine white CoCo 3 with the label on the bottom that's never been poked through, something like that. A Resto Mod, like I said, is a little bit newer concept in the car collecting world, but basically it's you talking about a car where you're mixing old and new technology to kind of have a best of both worlds experience. So like putting disc brakes on your 65 Impala, putting fuel injection on your 72 Camaro, something like that, where you put on a new technology to sort of hopefully we preserve the character of the older machine, the older car. But, you've obviously changed some of the actual running details. And so the analogy there might be, putting a CoCo 3 with Gimme X in it, or, a CoCo 2 with the CoCo VGA, or, replacing the keyboard with, a mechanical switch keyboard, stuffing it full of, memory, like a Moo board or one of these 2 meg kits that are available these days, or that sort of thing. So I came up with this question. Basically, all the time we see it, like on the Facebook group, somebody says, "Hey, I found this CoCo for $15 at the local thrift store. Now what do I do with it?" And somebody say, "Oh, well, the first thing you got to do is get CoCo VGA in it." And said, "Well, the next thing before CoCo VGA even, you need to get the CoCo STC, and you need to add a brand new keyboard from Ed Snyder or whatever." And very rarely do we see somebody say, "Oh, well, you just need a cassette cable and you can play WAV files to it through your cell phone and start that way." So I guess that's my question. I mean, if you have a working machine, what should we be getting people doing? Should we get them playing with the machine, working with what's readily available and without breaking the bank? I guess it's a prejudiced way to say it, but is that good enough, or does everybody need to have in their mind that they're going to They're going to retrobrite their machine. They're going to replace the keyboard. They're going to replace everything inside of it. They're going to put on every extension available. What's the right way to do it? And maybe there is no right way, but what do you guys think? How do you like to see it done?
Well, the only right way is how I do it.
Exactly.
That's it. I mean, that's what everybody says to themselves, right?
No, how would you do it?
I was just thinking of what John was describing. That sounds Trailer Queens to me. Polishing it up, you want it to look pristine. I think there's two parts to that hobby. I think some people like to spend more time doing that than actually using the computer, because it drives their real interest, which is, modifying it, working with hardware. The resto mods, I think that's where we get into the CoCo VGA and the Gimme X, because those are actually kind of, I don't know if you call them disruptive, but they're taking on actual hardware tasks of the computer, changing how it functions at a low level, even if it's compatible or not. All the CoCos I have are, well, I've got a couple of the CoCo VGAs, so I like those, but I also like having the stock CoCo, which is good enough for me. And all my computers are, working computers, and by that I mean I want to work with them, I want to use them. I don't want to, I'm not a collector where I'm holding on to one because it's got a low serial number and it's pristine and it's untouched.
I'll give you my perspective on it. I think when you look at the upgrades from 10, 20 years ago for the CoCo in the market then, they weren't so much changing the computer internally as they were adding things such as the Super IDE and later the CoCo SDC, where they were enhancing the capabilities of the computer through external means like storage. Or, for instance, even DriveWire, right, that basically extended out the CoCo to allow storage onto a PC server, right? Now, what we're seeing, we're kind of pushing outside of the normal upgrades, right? These aren't necessarily 512 or even 512K or 2 meg upgrades anymore. We're looking at, doing the, it's like sticking a horn on a horse and calling it a unicorn, right? We're making 2 meg ports for CoCo 1s and 2s, and we're doing Gimme X's on the CoCo 3. I mean, it's this is getting closer to Frankenstein kind of stuff, right? It's blurring the line, I think, between what we always took for granted that the CoCo could be extended to do and creating an Uber CoCo in a way that is truly different. And I think that has really come of age in the last 3 or 4 years, probably, right? Not to say that there weren't those types of upgrades out on the edge before. I know there was a 256K RAM upgrade for the CoCo 2 back in the day, but I don't think that really took off. But we're really pushing the envelope here, I think, with this new hardware. The capabilities we're bringing to the CoCo are more, if I can use the word, invasive. As for me, I'm fascinated by all that, of course, because I think there's a kick that we get out of making the CoCo do something it didn't do before, but philosophically, where does it stop becoming a CoCo 1 or a CoCo 2 and a CoCo 3 and becoming a CoCo 2 Plus or CoCo 3 Plus, right? How do we apply those monikers to the hardware that we've grown up with now that we know we can alter them in such a critical way? As far as I'm concerned, I'm always going to have the standard stock color computers in my collection. I would probably devote, a subset of that to doing this kind of experimentation on the hardware side. But it does raise some interesting questions.
Yeah. Well, like you say, I mean, just to be clear, nobody's saying that there's anything wrong with the extended stuff or whatever you want to do, that quote-unquote invasive stuff.
Oh, absolutely not. I guess a good analogy is I can appreciate... Go ahead.
That it is such a new and more deeper change than what we're used to, so it raises other questions, and that's all I'm pointing out. I'm not being critical at all.
For me, it raises the question, well, what is the connection? What is the motivation? Nothing wrong with having a different motivation. It's just I'm not sure I understand it, some of it. And some of it I kind of understand, but maybe just don't share it down all to the fire in the belly kind of standpoint. It's somewhat similar. You may be aware of this YouTube personality, the 8-Bit guy, and he's got a project that he's kind of trying to shepherd along to build his dream computer or whatever it's called. He started out, he wanted a 65-816 and a certain kind of graphics and whatever, but he wants to run more basic on it, I think, and whatever else. Not sure. I mean, I'm following the project loosely. I'm not sure how well it's sticking to that. I'm sure that you're seeing a lot of people that are kind of fighting over it to some degree over, well, it needs to be more like this or less like that, fighting over what style of controllers to support, that sort of thing. But, I think it kind of comes down to that. It's like, what's the motivation for something that's not the same as what we grew up with? And it's fine, like I said, it's fine if you want to do something different. And just more kind of tossing it around is where is the motivation? What's the line? Or it doesn't have to be a line either. Just trying to watch my language, but
sure. Well, it's like monster trucks, right? I appreciate the monster trucks. They're cool. They're awesome. They can do all these phenomenal things. They're gigantic and everything. But me, I'm going to keep driving my Ford Ranger.
Exactly.
Not every car that you see at a car show is a souped up car with old and new technology, right? Some people like to restore to the pristine, even going as far as using original parts or new old stock or, repurposed parts that are as close to the original as possible. Other people want to, throw electronic fuel injection into a 1960s car.
Well, and like you say, I mean, if you're going to drive a car, I don't want to drive a car with drum brakes, and I might enjoy driving a car with a carburetor for a while, but when it gets to be wintertime or whatever, I'm going to probably want my fuel injection back.
Yeah.
And so, again, it comes down to what do you want? I mean, on the one hand, I can appreciate the monster truck per se, or the really tricked out stuff. It's neat and interesting, and from a technical perspective. But then, like I said, on the other hand, I mean, I don't necessarily want to do that with mine. I want to use them. But on the other hand, like you see these guys, like with the Apple One kits where they track down the parts that are the exact month and year of manufacture for the for the ICs or the exact kind of capacitor or whatever. I don't really see the point of that either. So I guess that's sort of, I'm more in the middle. I want to be able to use them. I want them to work. I don't want them to blow up. I don't mind replacing some parts with some newer stuff or based on what's available or stuff that works a little better. But I also don't want to hack off half the board and replace it with something that's, liquid cooled or whatever else. I don't know. Neil, you've been really quiet. Why don't you stick your neck out here?
Yeah. Also, you guys have good points. I'm pretty much on board with what you're saying. I do like stuff kind of more on the original side, and I do like to use my collection. Including I do have a couple of retro cars actually, and they're in good shape. But I do like to take them out and drive them. When it comes to mods, if it's something useful, like a RAM upgrade or the Super IDE, CoCo SDC, so don't always have to use floppy disks. I mean, I think that's great, but some of these other mods, I'm not against them, but at what point does it become not a CoCo? It's almost getting to be a whole different machine. And then, for me, I don't know, it just kind of changes what I'm used to using, like the part of the hobby. So.
Right. Well, like anything that, well, maybe not, I mean, it sounds too sweeping, maybe, but when you have to write whole new chunks of software, not even chunks, but like whole new applications, make use of something, it depends on what you're doing and what the thing actually, what capability it actually gives you, but you're definitely making it more of a specialty project if you need brand new applications to do it. Whereas, if I can't go into the colorcomputerarchive.com and download some code that'll make use of the hardware, well, like you said, at the very least, you have to ask yourself then, is it even CoCo?
Right. And coming from myself, which I'm not a programmer, so I can't even take advantage of that, myself.
Right.
So.
Again, the monster truck is cool, but you can't drive it to the grocery store.
Or not in normal circumstances, that's for sure.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess that's the thing is see people get really excited about some of these projects that are out there that they just don't. It's hard for me to see the general appeal to them, and I don't want to down people's projects. I would definitely. I know we've mentioned names of some projects just to set the stage for what kinds of things we're thinking about, but we're definitely not trying to discourage anybody from participating in those projects or supporting those projects. We're just sort of asking the question, is this really what we want? And, why do we want it? What are we pursuing by going those directions? Again, I hope we're not boiling people's blood and making everybody ready to call us un-American for for whatever. I think we've been around the hobby long enough to have our own opinions here, and we're just sharing them and see if anybody else agrees or disagrees. And if you disagree, definitely feel free to send us some email, feedback@cococrew.org, and let's discuss it. Keep it civil. You don't have to agree. And if you don't want it shared on the air, send us email and say you don't want it on the air. But if you do want to be on the air, well, sending us email is not a bad way to get there. I'm not sure we've resolved anything here, or solved any questions, but just kind of want to throw it out there that there are some other opinions on some other perspectives on why we're in the hobby and what kind of things we're wanting to do. Kind of drawing it to a close. I wonder if anyone else had any thoughts.
No, I think this is good philosophical discussion. It's meant, as you said, not to critique, but just to expand and think about. It's the kind of stuff that you sit around with a pipe or a cigar and a brandy and just talk about.
Well, that's exactly what I was going for. So hopefully nobody's sitting around polishing their guns or anything. But the hobby has grown over the past few years. There are some new perspectives involved, certainly some new offerings. Some people love the new offerings. A lot of the new people love the new offerings, so that's fine. Because some of us don't quite know where that stuff's going. Don't have to know. Just kind of wanting to see where everybody's at and see what they're thinking.
Yep. Always comes back to scratch your itch. If
exactly.
What you like, then be happy. Follow your bliss.
That's it.
Enjoy the hobby.
Enjoy the hobby, exactly. Cool. Well, I'm going to go back to my CoCos that are a little ugly and a little dirty, and basically only have upgrades that are compatible with the stock machines. And that's just the way I like to roll. And so you guys go off and do the same, or whatever else you want to do.
You do you.
Exactly. All right. Well, why don't we wrap this up, take another break, and then we'll be back with the rest of the show.
Does your CoCo 3 run hot? Are you using an older Model 512K RAM upgrade? Or maybe you have a 128K CoCo 3 that could use more memory. The Triad 512K memory board from Cloud9 is the solution you're looking for. Named for its unique triangular shape, the Triad only draws about 22 milliamps of current. That's an amazing 95% reduction in power. Less power means less heat and less stress on your Color Computer 3. The Triad 512K memory upgrade has been in production since 2013 with more than 500 units sold. So whether you need to upgrade to 512K or want to replace an older power-hungry memory board, the Cloud9 Triad is the proven, reliable 512K solution. Often copied, never duplicated. The Triad 512K upgrade from Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 52? Wowza, I had to think about that for a second. I still can't believe we have recorded this many episodes already. Well, this month I had a real surprise. I received an email from, I'd say, probably the youngest current CoCo programmer, and also very talented. Morgan Donahue, who is Brendan Donahue's daughter, has been coding a game called Bombs Away, which I got to check out last year at Tandy Assembly in its early state. I enjoyed this game so much that I must have played it for a few hours straight, and I broke the top high score from other people who played it at the fest. Now it seems Morgan has finished the game and put her polish on it. The version I received on email I noticed has some improvements made to it, such as your character movement, and it is a lot more challenging. What makes this game extra special is that it utilizes the CoCo VGA hardware, which I guess is no surprise seeing that Brendan is one of the guys behind the CoCo VGA project. I think it's safe to say this is the first game coded to require a CoCo VGA. Please don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. Alright, enough chatter. On to the game. Bombs Away is an arcade-style game, and like most fun arcade games, the game is simple, but super addictive. You move your character at the bottom of the screen by walking left or right. You must dodge all the bombs falling down at you. The bombs fall randomly, and you have to always be on the lookout for openings to stay clear of them. Occasionally you will see hearts falling down, and those will give you an extra life. You receive 3 lives when the game starts, and you want to try getting all the hearts you can to collect a surplus of lives. It sounds easy, but sometimes going after those hearts will lead you into falling bombs. The longer you play, your score increases, and you also receive extra points by collecting hearts. So that is another incentive to go after them. If you want to see this game in action and try it out, visit Morgan's booth at Tandy Assembly. She will have it running for you to play and also have a score sheet out keeping track of everyone's highest scores. If you can't find Morgan, look for a girl wearing the coolest t-shirt, a Coco Cat shirt. And on that note, I hope to see all of you at Tandy Assembly this year. As far as Bombs Away being released for everyone to download and enjoy at home, I'm not 100% sure. I believe at some point Morgan and Brendan will release it. Maybe reach out to Brendan if you're interested. Well, that's it for this month. As per usual, happy CoCo gaming and game on.
You're listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast.
Well, it's that time again. We have reached the end of episode 52. You have now found yourself at the end of the podcast. Unfortunately, it's not like the back of a magazine where you have all those sketchy ads to order from. But on the positive side, we will be back next month with another episode. Perhaps covering highlights from Tandy Assembly? But of course, it'll just be a recap for all of you, because you are going, right? I'll be looking forward to seeing you all there. Like usual, I'd like to thank our host John Linville for painstakingly gathering all those news articles each month and producing informative tech segments. Mike Rowan for editing the podcast and creating cool commercials and audio bumpers. Boise Pete, our official CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Ron Klein for being a full-time part of our podcast. Last but not least, all of you who listen and support us each month. Please keep your feedback coming in. We honestly do like hearing from you. My final words are, go to Tandy Assembly and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.